Greetings Guardians, my name is Bife here. So, what happened in Edge of Fate's ending? If you haven't played yet, I encourage you to switch off now so that we are just keeping you free from spoilers, because we're going to be covering a bunch of them, including plot details from throughout the entire campaign of Edge of Fate and, of course, the final cutscenes. So, with that disclaimer given, let's begin. To understand the deepest part of the lore of Edge of Fate's ending, we really need to start with Orin, her job as the emissary and her quitting. She has a moment in the lore of the Rite of the Nine from the Rite of the Nine event that happened just before Edge of Fate, and in that moment she basically realized something critical that she needed to tell us, a message that she had to deliver. This is what brought her to the decision to quit. But in the process of her escape and ecdysis, she understandably had her memory scrambled as she lost her hold of the perspective of the Nine. What does that mean? Well, let's put it really simply. As normal people, we know about the present and the past, but we can't see into the future. This is how things work for beings in the third dimension. The Nine, however, are different. They are fourth dimensional beings, which means that they are above our dimension of existence. But it also means that they experience time in a very different manner. Because of their place as fourth dimensional beings, in the Edge of Fate we learned that the Nine can see the past, the present, and the future, and they experience the whole timeline. When Orin became the emissary of the Nine, she gained this perspective slowly but surely, and also began to be able to see the future, as well as the present and the past. When she quit, she started losing this perception, and her memories became disorganized and indistinct thanks to the shrinking down, and also thanks to a little further meddling from the Nine. This is also why she occasionally makes statements that sound more metaphorical than literal. I think she literally describes her mind as scrambled eggs at one point, and I think that that's actually an appropriate analogy. So we have Orin, who has to find us and deliver a critical message to us. In the meantime, back on Earth, Ikora Rey is nearly hit by a train and is summoned to Kepler just like us. This is to say nothing of her past life, where she was actually hit by a train. And the entire reason for that, of course, was so that the Nine could place her in the exact spot where her ghost Ophiuchus would find her, so that she would actually then follow along for all the events that would unfold, and would then be able to do everything that she does in Edge of Fate, and to also be there for the message. And then, of course, we have Lodi, who was straight up abducted from the 60s as a result of Orin quitting her job as the emissary, and the Nine needing a new emissary. All emissaries have the quality of wanting to be communicators or facilitators of peace, which is a trait that both Lodi and Orin unsurprisingly share and actually display a lot of in their lore. So we have the roles of our heroes somewhat explained. What about the villains? Partway through the campaign we run into the Vex, who in this instance are being led by Maya Sundaresh. These are the choral Vex that she controls through her Echo of Command, and they're working to establish Maya Sundaresh's goal. She says she wants to bring about a new golden age, but she's still madly driven by the goal of bringing back Chioma Essie. Though we saw the methods by which she did that in Echoes, and let's just say that she is not a protagonist. She is a mad villain. On Kepler, we also encountered the House of Exiles and their Archon, the religious figure of the house who had developed a hive mind of sorts. It allows him to speak and control the rest of the house in a shared consciousness of sorts, where he can jump into the bodies of various other Elixni that are connected to him, and then just sort of go back and forth as needs be. Those Elixni speak with his voice, and if they die, then he can just transfer to another member of the house and start speaking and fighting through them. Throughout the entirety of our time on Kepler, he had been consistently going on religious ramblings throughout the entire conflict, and, well, we learned two things from those ramblings. The first was that they were attempting to feed the singularity at the heart of Kepler in order to ascend into godhood. Secondly, we learned that the Archon and his house were obsessed with something they call the Giver, which they referred to almost like a divine entity, and that the Giver was apparently connected to the Nine, dark matter, and the anomaly at the heart of Kepler. We put a spanner or two in the work of their various plans, but in the process of killing the Archon's prime servitor, He was goaded into revealing that the house was going to try and broaden the singularity, partly by use of their nearby moored ketch, which lay deep within Kepler's furthest reaches, near its heart, near the singularity. Our access to the singularity itself was blocked once again by Maya's Vex, and it was here that as we destroyed them and gained access, that Maya informed us that she had already achieved what she wanted to on Kepler. She had already acquired what she'd come for. We didn't quite know what this meant, but we would soon have a vague idea and find out more. All of this leads us to the final mission, Message, where we venture into the heart of Kepler at last, and after fighting through various enemies, reached the singularity, and see the message from the Nine that we were all brought here to listen to. At the heart of Kepler, where we found the singularity and gazed upon it for the first time, it was a singularity, but there was also an unidentifiable mass around it, slowly drifting into the singularity's heart. Orin, at this point, then finally remembered what she was trying to tell us all along.
When you're ready.
Not running from this one, as much as I'd like to. Not every day you resurrect a god.
You stand here, that I would not die alone again.
If you cannot give me what I want, what can you do?
Still I die afraid, at your sister's command.
You are a being who bends all rules. Why do you fear breaking this one?
A death ensures extinction. Listen carefully, children of my earth. To survive, you must bind the Nine. It cannot be done. The weapon will do it. Strike true, weapon. Goodbye, Ambassador. Goodbye, Commander.
Come, coward.
That's a neat little trick. Thanks, friend. I'm fine. I'm dead again. Or 3 is dead again. The 9 can't exist here. Same as we can't exist in a painting.
3 said their death starts a chain reaction that leads to extinction. But if they went through all the trouble to get us here, to send a message to the children of their Earth,
Then it must be a warning, not a promise. 3 gave us instructions to prevent extinction.
bind the 9. A dying wish to save us.
As we saw that first great reveal of 3, Orin told us that that thing in the middle of the skybox with all of its massive writhing tentacles was indeed the remains of 3, one member of the 9. The member of the 9 in particular who is tied to the gravitational orbit of Earth itself. The consequences of this are still unknown, but it is almost certain that there will be some kind of impact on Earth, if not in the short term, then definitely in the long term. These remains are what the Archon of the House of Exile had long referred to as the Giver. The prophetic abilities of the Archon, Lavask, had directed him and his house to destabilize the singularity at the heart of Kepler by feeding it the remains of 3. If the singularity grew in size enough, it would expand, taking Kepler with it and then the whole of the solar system. The Archon believed that this would lead to a sort of moment of ascension for him and his house, as well as the obvious benefit of the destruction of his enemies, whether they be the Ionians or the humans of the system at large. His religious tone takes on an even darker twist in all of this, as he then says that he will continue to feed the body of the Giver to the singularity. If we allowed that to happen, then needless to say, it was all over for the entire system. So, we put an end to it. Something important to clarify is that the Archon is able to control and speak through many members of his house. With this in mind, his death at our hands might not necessarily be as true as we might want. His ability to possess others is an unknown power, and the extent of that control, and whether it allows him to possess someone else permanently, is something poorly understood. At worst, he might still be out there. At best, he died and his house is leaderless. The one thing that we definitely could confirm was simply that the Archon's plans of feeding 3, the Giver, to the singularity had failed. And here, we need to talk about one final piece on the board, the Drifter. He was also drawn to Kepler, but he was also dealing with something else. His vessel, the Derelict, was being pulled toward the singularity by the Hall, a massive engine of potential which the 9 gifted to the Drifter. For the longest time, he had also been hosting the Tournament of Gambit, partly at the request of the 9. All the motes that had been collected over the years were filled with potential and energy from the foes that we had slain. Their power was in the Hall, and they were flowing and pulling towards the singularity, dragging the Drifter's vessel with it. All this would be taking place as we headed to the Ketch to face down the Archon, and when the Archon was defeated at our hands, the Drifter was struck with a wild idea. If 3 was dead, and the energy was being pulled back to it, why not simply release it, and allow it to become one with 3? Through this method of imparting all of this energy back into 3's body, momentarily, we would be able to resurrect a god, to bring back a member of the 9. The Drifter had been hosting Gambit for years, and we had been playing Gambit for years, off and on. There was a reason for it, and that reason was this. The 9's 4-dimensional nature meant that even if we did resurrect 3, they would not last. And so, we had to make use of this opportunity, even though it would result in a momentary resurrection followed by a second death. The Drifter dropped the Hall toward the remains of 3, and momentarily returned a god to life. As it was brought back, immediately it needed to deliver its message, and so it possessed its new emissary, its new ambassador, Lodi. This moment explains why one of Lodi's eyes immediately illuminated. In these last few seconds, he is being possessed by 3 as he delivers that last, most important message. As Lodi began to deliver the message, our perceptions changed as well. I'm not entirely sure what's going on here, but I believe that this is 3 displaying the moment of its death, which is why everything looks substantially different, and why we also see Maya Sundaresh on the vast open plain on the surface of Kepler. But even in these dire moments, and with little time left, 3's first words to us were not its immediate message, but simply a note about how it was glad to not die alone again, even if it was afraid to do so. We also quickly saw what happened as Maya Sundaresh tried to impose her will upon 3, pulling it into our dimension as punishment for its inability to acquiesce to her demands. The 9 cannot bring things back in time, they can only pull them forward. This enraged Maya. This would not be allowed, and so she would wreak consequence upon 3, and pull a 4th dimensional being into 3 dimensions. To be really clear, as Lodi would explain later, this is a little bit like if we were forced to exist on a 2-dimensional plane, such as if we were squeezed into a painting or crushed under a steamroller. In this manner of existence, the 9 cannot exist, so 3 was dead no matter what. But before 3 died to Maya's commanding force, it was able to leave us with a simple warning and an instruction. It warned us that its death would be the catalyst that led to an oncoming extinction event. It also claimed that the only way for us, the children of its Earth, to survive would be to bind the 9. The nature of the oncoming extinction event and what binding the 9 means are mysteries for another day. But now we have a heading, and we understand what we must do to prevent humanity from dying again. The stakes are just as high as they've ever been. Should we fail, the last light of our civilization will go out. Hopefully that clarified the ending of Edge of Fate for you. From here, Orin would return to the city, free to live a life all of her own. We would prepare alongside Ikora for the next threats that would face us. Lodi would embrace his role as the new emissary of the 9, and the Drifter would have to come to terms with the reality of what was happening, and the fact that for the longest time, we had all simply been pawns in the game of beings that could see into the future and experience everything from their birth to their death. Hopefully that clarified it all, and if it did, go ahead and leave a like and leave your thoughts down below in the comments section. Of course, if you want more Destiny content, go ahead and hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe to turn on those email notifications. But as per usual, know that your viewership as always has been quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name is Bife. Horodasya ad Astra. I'll see you Starside.